And welcome back. Okay, so it's 11 minutes past 7 a.m. Good morning. Welcome back to Good Morning Kenya. So it's now time for us to get into the political scene and fight it. As politicians, yes, we are not politicians, but we have to try. All right. Executive Director of County Governors Watch. He is with me in studio this morning. An apology from Wakili George Kithi, who could not make it, but we have to get the show on the road. Kevin, good morning.
For a new day and his blessings for close to a new month.
Yes.
Yes.
We are coming to an end. Can you imagine that the year is almost coming to the first half of it?
Precisely. And if you look at, there's a song that goes, count your blessings, name them one by one.
Yes.
So we'll be asking ourselves, what are those blessings? And can we be able to begin? And normally when the year begins, a majority of us like writing some things called New Year resolutions. So where we'll be...
Are they even practical?
We'll be looking at the box and ticking them one by one.
This is the time that somebody will say that syllabus in Akimbia Sana, that you'll realize that some of the resolutions you write do not come to count.
Precisely.
Being a Monday, a majority of students and pupils will be going back to school this week.
Yes.
After a short break, and now it's time for parents and guardians take their kids back to school. But still, there is that case of financial strain, which is now casting a lot of shadow as new term enters and starts. The cost of materials, books, uniforms, school fees. Some parents are complaining that the new administrations or students are being forced, or parents are being forced to to give more in terms of school fees. It's not something new every beginning of the term.
Yeah, it's not anything new, and I think that Kenyans are basically getting accustomed to that culture, because the degree of rants, questions and accountability that parents and guardians are asking many times only revolve around the parents. But the beauty about this, Victor, is that Kenya is extremely established, including the fact that we have networks of both parents, of teachers, who therefore are organized in various associations. We have parents associations, we have teachers associations, and so these are networks that really are supposed to help us to answer some of those questions. And as a parent, I also sit in some of those meetings, and really the manner in which some of the responses are given. For example, once you pay the school fees, then there are levies that you're supposed to pay. There are other expectations, which really you wonder, what do they mean, and what to help us underscore is an audit of education, the cost of education in this country. As much as we have global goals that we have to adhere to as a country, and international conventions, including our local manifestos of the government, where free education. So what free is this, and how much free is it? Is it free education, primary, ECD, or is it free education secondary school, or is it free education tertiary and universities and colleges? So lots of questions that we really need to begin to ask, so that we agree on the cost of education, number one. Number two is the politics around equipment and requirements, where, for example, you have to buy books, as you mentioned, or equipment. So if it is pens, you are asked for red pens, then they also want pens that write in bold. So you wonder, what is the essence of all this, and is it possible that we can be able to agree on what we need for how many my son, for how long within a school? Of course, we know that the term runs for a specific amount of time, but what degree of investment must parents and guardians therefore put in terms of equipment? Then, of course, the politics around publications of books. At this term, we are working with this book. The other term, you are told to buy another book that probably was not initially written in the... So, there's a lot of changes that is happening. That's guardians and parents are left wondering, kwa nini hawakusema mwanzoni? Because again, Kenyans are struggling with the financial not stabilizing as was expected. We hope that God the rains that are going on and that the produce is going to be fine.
But even as we talk about that, the teachers are also complaining about the capitation. I mean, that's a lot of delay in terms of disbursement of the capitation money, which is also putting a lot of strain in their pocket when paying for school fees.
Yeah, precisely.
Okay. So let's come back to this. How are things, before we get into the real discussion, the governors complained the other day that they don't have money being wired from the central granary, that is from the treasury. What's the state of affairs as we speak, almost 2 weeks later, since they made that statement?
That's still the state of affairs. Money has not been wired yet to county governments. I know that the CS has asked for a press release, press conference, I think is on May 5th, or the first week of May, to be able to respond to some of these questions. But it goes back to counties, that we must be able to enhance our own source revenue, that counties must build their individual county capacities to have money on the national treasury, and money that is coming from national government is dealt with. Sometimes as devolution lovers and protagonists, we imagine that there is no political goodwill, particularly from this government, to ensure that devolution works. And there are many, many reasons. For example, you ask yourself, whereas health is devolved. Many, many meetings that are going on between
on the side of the counties?
On the side of functions. So health is devolved largely. But then from national government, it is going on. And there are many meetings that are being held to be able to discuss and engage with insofar as how to deal with this. But then you ask yourself, why are we taking so long? And so at the level of national, budgets are being channeled. But when it comes to monies that are supposed to go to counties, you don't see that happening on time. Number two, of course, is a degree of engagement with human resource aspects, so that a lot of the budget that ultimately goes to counties, it is put into recurrent expenditure, you know, payment of levies, payment of salaries, running government, as opposed to ensuring that this money, therefore, is being used for service delivery. So a lot of times the understand the technical details, because that is probably, I might say with due respect, not their business and is not in their interest. The interest of the common mwananchi is that services are being delivered. But so the urge is for those who sit at the technical tables, that when we look at service delivery and what needs to happen for devolution to work, let that happen. And His Excellency the President has been very categorical around ensuring to see that political goodwill moving very fast from the presidency to all the officers and institutions that are supposed to support devolution.
Many counties have gone digital in terms of their revenue collection. So what are the bottlenecks? Because when you look at Nairobi, for example, on source revenue, most of the county governments through different government institutions rolled out the e-collection of funds and all that. So where's the problem that when you say we need to enhance our own source revenue collection?
So one of the major problems that we have with that, Victor, targets. So we, for example, at the beginning of the financial year, a county government is asked to put a target, a proposed target of your own source revenue. So that, for example, Nairobi County can say we want to collect 4 billion in the first year. But if you look aspect that you are talking about, for some of the counties that have proposed digitization, there are no laws to support that digitization system. So the county assemblies must pass a law to ensure that they are supposed to pay land rates, going out there and saying, wameweka system mpya, but we have not been involved. So issues like public participation, because somebody can decide and say, I am not aware about it. Number two, of course, is the failure of the system to function effectively. And because you're using the example of Nairobi, if you go to pay parking, and there is this gentleman, sinaingia tu kwa bank dakika 2-3 niweke hii pesa ama ni deal with what I want to deal with. So a lot of times the person might, the driver might choose to say, nikupe so mbili alilie gari, so you don't use the system, you pay this money in cash, which again is not going to be accounted for. But further to that, again, is corruption, so that even that fund. But ultimately, Victor, the citizen wants to be able to see that the monies that have been picked by the county are responding to the needs. So Nairobi might, for example, plus per day for rather on parking fees. But if you look at the state of the roads, the road infrastructure in the city is not commensurate to what the drivers, to what have been able to put in steps mechanisms to be able to enhance and to boost their own source revenue. The beauty again of this is intergovernmental relations between governors or county governments, the CRA, Commission on Revenue Allocation, and even institutions like County Governance Watch, where I come from, that have been at the forefront of now helping on some of these policies and legislations or legal frameworks that support on-source revenue. For example, one that we just did, the billing and rating policy, which therefore helps counties to understand measures or indicators for parking fees is 300 shillings. How have you arrived at that 300 shillings? So there are things that are looked at which border on, for example, security. Tell Mama Mboga, lipa hii pesa. Do they have, for example, washrooms? Do they have proper security? Do they have proper lighting? Water and sanitation. So the things that really provide for an ease of doing business with that kind of within that kind of a framework and also a context.
Are we looking at a situation where the back and forth between the national, the county governments will come to an end, much as the process of having on-source revenue is part of the constitution? Most of the counties are still looking at the to this back and forth between the two levels of governance.
This is going to come to an end, and especially because the third devolution, as opposed to when we really started, and against the challenges of stabilizing the devolved governments in terms of functionalities and all that. So there were lots of struggles at the beginning. We had a number of struggles, particularly in terms of passing laws that then would support devolution. But so since post-2022, we are now seeing governors and even county officials that are much more alive to the realities on the ground. So things like on-source revenue really become very, very fundamental, because counties are now beginning to also organize their sectors. So the people in the agricultural sector have been properly identified, or you are doing crop production, or you are in the value chain. So that county invested in database building and installations, where it becomes very easy now to know who is in which sector and what are they doing. So through that, it therefore becomes very easy for counties to engage with beneficiaries and even the service providers as per the sectors in question. If you go to water, for example, when counties call for meetings that are supposed to help them understand what must the water provision and all that, they know who to engage with, which never used to be. And of course, this is very instrumental, Victor. Counties and citizens are able to negotiate among themselves. You know, we have something called the CIDP, the County Integrated Development Planning. But a tool of planning and also a tool of budget making. But there has to be negotiations that happen, so that if there are value, I would call them mega project values for the county, and they were not in the CIDP as an example, then it becomes very easy for the county government to negotiate with the service providers and the people within that particular sector to be done, and for monies to be put in them. But as I finish on this, one of the things that we have not seen doing very well is accountability, because there is wastage of resources at the counties. Of course, it's the same manner as in the huge investments, especially engaging with public benefit organizations, civil society organizations, and especially citizens in terms that the monies that are put for specific projects, they need to happen.
Great. Lastly on this, that issue to do with the full transfer of functions. Again, there is that back and forth between the two levels of governance. Any sign of okay, we should be expecting, if you're a Catholic, is there
Definitely, definitely. And if you look at some of the functions that have already been earmarked for transfer, as at the tail end of last year, the national government seceding some of these functions, only that they are functions that do not to the realities and needs of the citizens, particularly if you look at things like museums, if you look at functions like libraries, you know, if you look at functions like, you know, things that really, it will take time before somebody like Kevin Osido, unless I am an ardent reader of books, to walk into a library. So government, county governments, you know, the interest of citizens in some of those functions that were sent or fully devolved to county governments. But moving forward is that there are lots of conversations now that are taking place between the national government, the Intergovernmental Relations and Technical Committee, and other institutions that support devolution to ensure that these functions are devolved. And one of those,
our county is quite capable to run these functions, or to, I mean, without any interference from the national government?
In my view, yes.
Fully devolved? In
my view, yes. And if you look at some of those functions, like water, you know, like roads, where we still have challenges with the plus A, B, C, D, and E. That fast track that to the discussion on the budget, where we're talking about the 10 billion roads and also the Council of Governors. So if you look at really what those functions mean to counties, in my view, having close to 13 years now, counties have the requisite capacity to be able to deliver those services. What we must do is to delink politics from service delivery, and whether it is both at national or county levels across the board, or we are talking about things like CDF, NGCDF, because I know that is one of the other hottest kids conversations within on the tables right now. But fast tracking that is also to invest in the resident technical, resident capacities of county. Having done this for all these regimes from 2013 to 2017, now 2022, counties must be able to deliver
again,
on this.
A lot of good intentions for service delivery. But again, another biggest issue is encountered during budget making process.
Yes.
Because either, I don't know what happens during budget process, because they'll have a certain figure, and then when it goes back to the national, certain figure.
Yes.
During budget making process, in 1 minute before you take a
So
break.
what happens is basically that there are policies and laws that are done, which I don't want to go into the details, because we have something called at the county level is a CIROP, the county budget or budget policy paper, which is done by the executive, submitted to the county assembly, and that is what now has the ceilings for each of the sectors.
And for different counties?
And for every county has its own paper, the 47 of them. So it is upon the citizens to provide their priorities, which are then discussed through public participation at the county assembly level. So for example, the county treasury or the CS for finance and economic planning of the county will have his or her own suggestions in that particular paper we are talking about, submit them to the county assembly. But the MCS there will say, you have given Ward A 18 dams, which we don't think are critical. But it is not upon the county assembly to make that decision. This suggestion public participation process, where then after that it comes back to the county assembly, they do a report which is submitted back to the executive through the county finance, CEC finance, and of course then it goes back to the governor assembly and then aspirations for the county.
Kevin, let's take a break. I want us to have some tea as we have this conversation. The president was in China last week, so let's interrogate what are some of the goodies in the basket that he came back to Kenya with. And finally, there is some hope that the Rironi Mau Summit Road, actual, the railway line, SGR, and so much more that I want us to take a look. And then, lastly, the affiliates or allies of the president says that the former president should keep off politics. We saw what President Obama did in the last election. Let's talk about that when we come back. For now, I want us to have some tea. I'm happy. Stay with us.